The stories of Premchand are not merely tales. They are the truth of society. Within them lie life, struggle, and a deep sense of humanity. Today, we meet the writer who brought poverty, honesty, and practical life alive through his words. Munshi Premchand. We are about to begin his story. On the night of Amavasya, new moon night. So let's begin. It was Diwali evening. Even the garbage heaps and ruins of Srinagar glowed with fortune. The town's boys and girls were walking towards the temple with lamps in white trays. Their faces glowed with the light of the lamps. Every home sparkled with brightness. Only Pandit Devdutt's Satdara mansion stood shrouded in darkness, grim and dreadful. Grim, because it hadn't forgotten its days of prosperity. Dreadful, because this brilliance seemed to mock it. There was a time when even envy would sigh at its grandeur, and now even disdain scoffed at it. Where once a doorman stood at the gate, now stood castor and wild fig trees. In the drawing room, a rogue bull roamed arrogantly. In the upper chambers where once beautiful women sang melodious tunes, today the cooing of wild pigeons echoed. Like the conduct of a careless schoolboy, its foundations were shaking, and its walls resembled the torn heart of a widow. But one cannot blame time. It was not time's fault, but the result of foolishness and short-sightedness. It was a new moon night. As if defeated by the brilliance outside, darkness had taken refuge in the vast mansion. Pandit Devdutt sat silently in his dimly lit room, deeply worried. For a month now, cruel fate had made a mockery of his wife Girija's life. Pandit Ji was prepared to endure poverty and sorrow. Faith in destiny kept him hopeful, but this new affliction was beyond his tolerance. Every day he sat by Girija's side, watching her fading face, tormented and weeping. When Girija, losing all hope, cried, he would comfort her, saying, "Don't cry, Girija, you'll get better soon." Devdutt's ancestors once ran an extensive business in moneylending. Most of their dealings were with nobles and princely states. In those times, honesty wasn't cheap. Millions were dealt with on plain sheets of paper. But the rebellion of 1857 destroyed many kingdoms, and with them, the wealthy and prosperous family of the Tiwari clan. Their treasury was looted, records were scattered. By the time peace returned and the princely states re-stabilized, times had changed. Promises now required written contracts, and even among documents, colored paper held more value than plain sheets. When Devdutt came of age, the only property left was that crumbling mansion. There was no means of livelihood. Farming required labor and hardship. Business required capital and intelligence. His education was not enough to find employment, and family pride prevented him from begging. So, 2 or 3 times a year, he would visit old clients uninvited, like a guest, and collect some farewell money and travel expenses. That's how he survived. The only symbol of past prestige that remained was a pile of old letters and bonds, whose ink had faded like their unlucky fate. Pandit Devdutt cherished these more than his life. On Dwitiya, when every household worshipped Lakshmi, Pandit Ji would, with pomp, worship those bundles of paper. If not Lakshmi herself, at least her symbolic memories. Dwitiya was a day of reverence for Pandit Ji's dignity. Call it irony or foolishness, but he took great pride in those documents. In village disputes, this decaying army of paper still proved useful, and the opposing party would surrender. If people can be proud of being Kshatriyas without having touched a weapon in 70 generations, then Pandit Devdutt's pride in those documents holding 70 lakh rupees isn't unjustified. It was still the night of Amavasya, but the lamp festival had ended. All around, it was a gambler's night of omens, as the outcome tonight would determine one's luck for the whole year. There was chaos over Lakshmi's arrival. Shells were being exchanged for gold coins. Even water was being sold as liquor in taverns. Except for Pandit Devdutt, there wasn't a person in town who wasn't busy trying to win others' money. Since morning, Girija's condition had worsened. The harsh fever was causing her to faint repeatedly. Suddenly, she opened her eyes and in a very weak voice said, "Is it Diwali today?" Devdutt was so hopeless that even seeing her awake didn't bring him joy. He replied, "Yes, today is Diwali." Girija looked around with tearful eyes and said, "Won't there be lamps lit in our house?" Devdutt broke down in tears. Girija again, in that same weak voice, said, "Look, even on the biggest day of the year, our home is in darkness. Please help me up, I'll light the lamps myself." Her words pierced Devdutt's heart. A person's final moments are filled with desires and emotions. In the town, Lala Shankar Das was a well-known physician. In his Pran Sanjeevan Aushadalay life-giving pharmacy, he had set up a printing press instead of actual medicines. Medicines were scarcely made, advertisements were printed in abundance. He would often say, illness is only a luxury of the rich, and according to political economy, we must tax this indulgence as much as possible. If someone is poor, let him be. If someone dies, let him die. What right do they have to fall sick and expect free medicine? The downfall of India is mostly due to free healthcare. It's made people careless and weak. Devdutt had been going to him daily for a month to get medicine, but the physician never gave him a glance, so he couldn't express his dire condition. Devdutt tried every possible way to move the physician's heart. He came with tearful eyes, but the doctor had no tenderness in his solid heart. That same terrifying new moon night continued. The stars in the sky, after midnight, shone even more brightly, as though they were smirking at the darkened Diwali of Srinagar. In despair, Devdutt rose from Girija's bedside and walked toward the physician's house. He knew Lalaji would never come without his fee. But even in hopelessness, hope lingers. Devdutt kept walking. At that time, Hakimji was busy writing an advertisement for his Ramban Bindu. Seeing the emotional language and attractive power of that advertisement, one could not tell whether he was a crown jewel of physicians or a doctorate in calligraphy. Reader, have a direct experience of his Urdu advertisement. Viewers, do you know who I am? Your pale face, your tense veins, your getting breathless with even a little effort, your deprivation from the pleasures of the world, your poor diet, these all answer this question in the negative. Listen, who am I? I am that person who has taken a pledge to erase human ailments from the face of the earth. I have resolved to cleanse the world of all those fake, hypocritical, wheat-like but barley in nature, fraudulent, so-called hakims. I am that astonishing being, skilled in speech, who turns the sorrowful into joyful, the hopeless into successful, the coward into brave, the jackal into a lion, and this is not through magic or mantras, but through the minor miracles of my invention, Amrit Bindu. What is Amrit Bindu? Only I know. Sage Agastya whispered its formula into Dhanvantari's ears. When you open the VP parcel, you will know its reality. It is the water of life, the essence of manhood, the elixir of wisdom, the preserve of intelligence, and the polish of the mind. If years of composing poetry haven't made you a poet, if burning the midnight oil hasn't brought you success in exams, if flattery of agents and enduring clients still leaves you wandering like a hungry dog in court corridors, if your shouting and desk thumping can't make your speeches impactful, then use Amrit Bindu. Its biggest benefit, which you will realize on the first day, is that your eyes will open and you will never again fall for the traps of advertising hakims. Hakimji was reading this ad aloud with pride in his eyes, full of hope that it would succeed, when Devdutt's voice came from outside. Hakimji became very happy. It was night time, and his fees doubled then. Taking a lantern, he stepped outside, only to see Devdutt fall at his feet, weeping. Devdutt said, Hakimji, please have mercy on me tonight. Girija is at death's door, you are the only one who can save her. My fate may be sealed, but if you would just come and take a look, it will ease my heart. I will know I did everything I could for her. God knows I'm not worthy to serve you, but as long as I live, I will sing your praises and remain your humble servant. Hakimji felt a little pity, but like a firefly's glow, it was quickly consumed in the vast darkness of self-interest. It was a new moon night. Silence covered the trees. The winners were waking their children and giving them rewards. The losers were begging forgiveness from their angry and sulking wives. Suddenly, a bell started ringing loudly, cutting through the stillness of air and darkness. Its sweet sound was most pleasant in that silence. The sound came closer and eventually stopped at Pandit Devdutt's ruined home. Pandit Ji at that time was drowning in an ocean of despair. He didn't even have the strength to comfort his beloved Girija, dearer than life. What could he do? How could he bring that stone-hearted Hakim here? Oh cruel one, he thought, I would have served you all my life, printed your ads, crushed your medicines. Only now did he realize that the 70 lakh worth of ancestral letters were worth nothing. His pride in his family name was now meaningless. He took out the velvet pouch, pulled out the letters, those remnants of ancestral wealth, and one by one, offered them to the flame of the lamp. Just like well-fed bodies become offerings on a funeral pyre, those paper puppets too were devoured by the burning mouth of the flame. Just then, someone called from outside. He looked up in surprise, as if waking from sleep. Feeling his way through the dark, he reached the door. He saw several men standing with torches, and an elephant was tearing up the trees at the gate with its trunk. On the elephant sat a handsome young man with a saffron silk turban, a crescent-shaped sandal mark on his forehead. Sharp, upturned moustaches like spears, and a face radiating power and light. He looked like a noble warrior. His flared robe, tight-fitting pajamas, the sword hanging at his waist, and the golden necklaces and chains around his neck made him appear majestic. As soon as he saw Pandit Ji, he stepped down from the elephant and respectfully greeted him. Slightly embarrassed by the young man's humility, Pandit Ji asked, "Where have you come from, dear sir?" The young man responded with very humble words. His face radiated kindness. "I am your old servant. My home is in Rajnagar, where I am a landlord. Your ancestors greatly favored my forefathers. Whatever status and wealth I possess today is all due to their grace and kindness. I have heard your name from many of my relatives and had long wished to meet you. Today, that fortunate moment has arrived. Now my birth feels worthwhile." Tears welled up in Pandit Devdutt's eyes. The pride in his ancestral honor was the softest part of his heart. The helplessness that had covered his face disappeared for a moment. He assumed a serious expression and said, "It is your kindness to say so. Otherwise, a degenerate like me has no worth to even claim to be a descendant of those noble souls." By then, the servants had laid out a carpet in the courtyard. Both men sat down, and a conversation began, each word of which filled Pandit Ji's face with a joy like that of flowers blooming in the morning breeze. Pandit Ji's grandfather had loaned 25,000 rupees to the young Thakur's grandfather. Thakur now wanted to go to Gaya to perform his ancestors' last rites. For that, he felt it necessary to clear every bit of debt his family owed. He had found the loan recorded in the old account books. That 25,000 had now become 75,000. It was to repay this debt that the Thakur had come. It is religion that gives birth to noble thoughts in the heart. But to turn those thoughts into action, a pure and strong soul is needed. Otherwise, even noble thoughts can become cruel and sinful. At last, the Thakur said, "You must still have those documents?" Devdutt's heart sank. He composed himself and said, "Possibly. I can't say for certain." The Thakur said casually, "Look for them. If you find them, I'll take them with me." Pandit Devdutt stood up, but his heart had gone cold. Doubt crept in. Was fate just showing him a mirage? Who knows whether that document had been burned or not? If it wasn't found, who would give the money? How sad, to see the bowl of milk at your lips only to have it fall from your hands. O Lord, let the document be found. I have suffered greatly, please have mercy now. In a state of hope and despair, Devdutt went inside and began sorting through the remaining papers under the flickering lamplight. Suddenly, he jumped up, and filled with excitement, leapt 2 or 3 times like a madman in joy. Then he ran and embraced Girija and said, "Beloved, if God wills, you will now be saved." In his euphoria, he failed to notice that Girija was no more, only her lifeless body remained. Devdutt picked up the document and rushed to the door as if his feet had grown wings. But there he stopped himself, held back the wave of joy in his heart, and said, "Here it is. The document has been found." A sheer stroke of luck, otherwise the 70 lakh worth of papers had already become termite food. Sometimes, sudden success brings doubt. When the Thakur reached out to take the document, Devdutt feared he might tear it up and throw it away. Although this fear was baseless, man is a bundle of weaknesses. The Thakur sensed what Devdutt was thinking. He took the document casually, glanced at it in the torchlight, and said, "Now I believe you. Here is your money. Please bless me that my ancestors may find peace." Saying this, he took a pouch from his waist and pulled out 75 1,000 rupee notes and handed them to Devdutt. Pandit Ji's heart was pounding fiercely. His pulse was racing. He looked around cautiously to make sure no one else was watching, and then, with trembling hands, accepted the notes. In a futile attempt to show dignity, he didn't even count them. He just gave them a quick glance and stuffed them into his pocket. It was the same night of Amavasya, new moon. The heavenly lamps were already dimmed. Their fading light signaled the arrival of the sun. The eastern sky had donned a turquoise robe, while the western horizon showed a faint white glow. Pandit Devdutt returned after bidding farewell to Thakur. At that moment, his heart was illuminated with the pure light of generosity. No supplicant could leave his home disappointed that day. It was now firmly decided to conduct the Satyanarayan Katha with great pomp. He had finalized his plans for Girija's clothes and jewelry. Inside the inner quarters, he bowed before Shalagram, a sacred stone, with mind, word, and deed. Then he gathered the rest of the letters and documents and placed them in the same velvet pouch. However, now he no longer believed that any of those dead papers would come alive again. Rather, now that his livelihood was secure, he could take pride in his ancestral prestige. At that time, he was intoxicated with confidence and enthusiasm. Now I need no more wealth in life. God has given me enough. This is sufficient for Girija and me to live happily. He had no idea that Girija's life had already come to an end. In his heart, a hopeful thought tickled. When Girija hears this joyous news, she will surely rise up. It was worry and suffering that had brought her to this miserable state. What else could happen to someone who never had enough to eat, who was never free from the crushing bonds of hopelessness and poverty? Thinking this, he went over to Girija, gently nudged her, and said, "Girija, open your eyes. See, God has heard your prayers and shown us mercy. How are you feeling?" But when Girija didn't stir at all, he lifted the blanket and looked at her face. A heart-wrenching sigh escaped his chest. He sat down right there, holding his head in despair. Blood like tears dropped from his eyes. Ah, was this wealth given to me at such a costly price? Has the court of the Almighty given me the cost of this beloved life in rupees? Oh God, you truly do justice. I need Girija, not the money. This bargain is far too expensive. The dark night of Amavasya, like Girija's dark life, had come to an end. Farmers were singing loudly and cheerfully in the fields as they began ploughing. Shivering children prayed for the sun to rise. At the village well, playful village women had gathered, not to draw water, but to laugh. One mimicked her toothless mother-in-law while dipping her pot into the well, another leaned against the posts, smiling and whispering secrets of love to her friend. Old women, holding their grandchildren, were cursing their daughters-in-law for not returning from the well even after an hour. Meanwhile, the royal physician, Lala Shankar Das, was still enjoying a sweet sleep. Coughing children and groaning elders had already begun gathering at the doors of his dispensary. A little distance from the crowd, 2 or 3 handsome but weary-looking young men were pacing back and forth, waiting to speak to the physician in private. Just then, Pandit Devdutt appeared, bare-headed, bare-chested, his red eyes terrifying, clutching a bundle of papers, and came running. He began shouting so loudly at the door of the dispensary that the physician, Vaidyaji, was startled and called out to the servant to open the door. The servant had returned late at night from a community gathering. He suffered from a condition of deep sleep, which even the physician's continuous lectures and scolding medicines could not cure. Grumbling, he got up, opened the door, and went off looking for fire to light his hookah. The physician was trying to get up when suddenly Devdutt appeared before him, threw down a bundle of banknotes, and said, "Vaidyaji, these are notes worth 75,000 rupees. This is your reward and your fee. Come and look at Girija, do something, anything, so that she opens her eyes just once. I offer all this for just one look, just one glance. You love money more than human life, right? Here is the money before you. But to me, one look from Girija is worth far more than all of this." The physician looked at Devdutt with a sympathetic and embarrassed gaze and simply said, "I am deeply sorry. I will forever be guilty in your eyes. But you have taught me a lesson. If God wills, I shall never make such a mistake again. I am truly sorry, truly." These words came from the depths of the physician's heart.